I've always had a passion for being around and learning about animals. When I was younger, going to zoos and animal parks was always a part of my life. I wanted to share my passion with family and friends, so I started working with people that loved animals as much as I did, and my YouTube channel was born. Welcome back to my animal education series. Today I'm here with Ramona in the middle of the Prairie Reclamation project. Hello.
Hi.
So, what can you tell us about this?
Sure. So this is the Kemp and Cora Hutchinson Bird Sanctuary. It is a prairie, as you can tell, and it, used to be probably other things, maybe a cornfield or a soybean field, something along those lines. We planted prairie here. I'm not sure how long ago. I want to say like 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And this is what we have today. So it's gone pretty far from seed to tall grasses.
And how do you manage this giant field here?
Sure. So prairie grasses are adapted to survive all sorts of crazy, awful situations. So first, they can survive droughts, like we're kind of in right now. We really need some rain. So a lot of the plants have really rough leaves or very thick leaves. That shows that they're adapted to, hold on to all of that water that they get. They also have extremely long root systems. So like the rosin weed here in front of us, their root systems are just as far below them as we are above the ground, which is pretty awesome.
And they're pretty tall too.
They are, yeah, they're taller than you are. So we have, the water conservation of these plants. They're also very well adapted to survive fire. So think about it, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, before, Europeans were here cutting down the prairie for farm fields, all of these grasses, they would dry out in the fall. And then what do we get? We get thunderstorms. With thunderstorms comes
fire.
Fire, comes lightning, which set everything on fire. And the pioneers, they would call those prairie fires the roaring buffalo, because it sounded like a huge herd of buffalo just moving across the landscape. So prairies go up like that, but because they're well adapted for it, they're also able to come back in the spring actually stronger and better than before. So fire makes those seeds germinate. Fire, it keeps the ground a little bit warmer, especially in those early spring months, so germination can happen quickly. And then they thrive on all of those nutrients that were put into the ground by that fire. So fire is what we use, usually on a rotation of like every other year here in this particular prairie. It was actually burnt just last October, November, in the late fall, early winter. And as you can see, didn't affect it one bit. We actually have more diversity this season than we did last year.
So how do you exactly plan the fires? I see you have these paths here, so do those serve any purpose?
They do, yeah. So any large path that we mow, those we call fire breaks. And basically we mow them just wide enough that the tallest piece of grass can't fall across the path and catch something that we don't want on fire. Our stewardship director here at the Nature Institute, he is a burn boss, so he's gone through all of the training, he knows all of the protocols. He can do it in a way that's safe, and he knows what conditions to look for. So we look for a day where the wind is blowing just a little bit and in a direction that we like.
Away from the people across the street.
Yeah, away from residential areas. We also look for a day that everything is relatively dry, so that it will catch fire quickly and burn really, really well. Kind of the worst thing for us is when it gets really wet or damp, and bits and pieces will burn, but not the whole thing. That's really a bad combination for us. So we want everything to burn quickly, but hot, and those are the conditions that we look for to do that.
Today would not be a good day for that, especially with all the wind.
All of this wind would be awful to do a burn.
So what kind of animals would you find in plains like this?
Sure. So in a prairie, we get a lot of animals that will move through, but what we can find on a fairly regular basis include rabbits, skunks, foxes, box turtles, snakes, and then tons and tons of birds. Like I said before, this is a bird sanctuary, And we do that, and we keep it prairie so that we can pull in all of those different birds. So we have goldfinches, we have bluebirds, we have well, the indigo buntings, they like edge habitat, so they like places that are close to open fields as well as forest. But they're out here.
Like over here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have forest everywhere around us as well. Of course, we have vultures that fly over. We have hawks that fly over. We have a pair of red-shouldered hawks that live in the trees over here, but of course frequent the prairie on a very regular basis. They scream all the time. It's great. But yeah, those are just a few, and I know I'm not naming everything that's out here.
And how would all of this benefit those animals? Like mine is cover, as you can see here. It's really thick.
So we have a really thick habitat, so they can hide really well. But they're looking for the plants. So like our skunks and groundhogs and different things like that, they're actually going to be digging up the roots and the tubers of some of these plants and eating those things. We have our birds that are eating the seeds. So we're actually not at the height of the prairie right now. If you were to come back in about a month, everything, all of the yellow stuff anyway, will be in bloom, will be in full bloom. We'll have goldenrod, all sorts of other things out here. And that's when the birds are here. That's when they come for food, for seeds, for different things like that. Another thing you can find tons of out here are butterflies. So right behind us we have bee balm. Another name is bergamot. Bees absolutely love it, but butterflies do as well. So if you look at the petals here, what do you notice about those petals? Like the type of flower. It's a tube flower, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those butterflies, they can stick that long tongue inside of that tube flower to pull out that nectar. And they just absolutely love these plants.
And there's a lot of them. There's some here, some here.
Absolutely,
They're everywhere.
absolutely. So you've probably been hearing a lot about pollinators lately.
Yes.
So we have a greenhouse and we grow prairie plants specifically for people so they can put in pollinator gardens. Because the prairies, they were a very, very important food source, a very important habitat for all of those pollinators. And of course, we've been hearing about the plight of the bees, right? Honeybees.
Exactly.
We have so many native bees to Illinois that don't require hives, and they're well adapted to all of these plants. So if we plant native plants in our pollinator gardens, we're actually going to be helping the bees more than if we plant, foreign plants into our, ornamental gardens and different things like that. So, of course, here at TNI, we are a huge proponent for native plants, planting those pollinator gardens.
And as I said in my pollinator episode, these look pretty cool. Like
They
you
do.
want those in your yard.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So do you mind showing us some of the other plants you have here?
Sure, yeah. So let's see, behind you, the stuff that is as tall or taller than you. So we have big blue stem, which is our state grass of Illinois. We also have rosin weed behind that, and that's one of those plants that's very well adapted for drought conditions. So if you feel the leaf, tell us what that leaf feels like.
Right here?
Yeah.
Very coarse and very rough.
Very coarse
Very
and rough
thick.
and thick, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So that tells us that it's well adapted for conserving all of that water. Of course, we've talked about the bergamot. Let's go back behind you just a little bit.
I'll follow you.
All right, that works. So over here is one of my favorite plants, and it doesn't have flowers on it right now, but this is our wild indigo. And it gets a really cool, we have two kinds, we have blue and white, but it gets a cool kind of a sweet pea type flower on it. So if you can imagine what a sweet pea flower looks like, that's the kind of flower that this gets. And then after the flowers are pollinated, we get these really, really cool seed pods. And these are full of seeds. They'll actually dry out, turn brown. And Native Americans, when they had little kids running around, they'd actually break off those indigo seed pods and it'd be a rattle. So they could actually play with them. Some indigo species have actually been used to dye fabric as well. So that one's a really, really cool one. And then here we have some ferny looking leaves. And this could be, I believe this is partridge pea. So this is another legume. So legumes are like our soybeans, our peanuts, different things like that. So this is going to have some tubers down underneath the ground. And it also gets a seed pod, kind of like your sugar snap pea or your green bean on it. So that's what they kind of look like. They have a really pretty yellow flower on them. Let's see, what else do we have? So on this side of the trail,
I'll go over here.
sure, I have some gray-headed coneflowers, and these are starting to kind of get to the end of their life cycle, so they're looking a little rough. But gray-headed coneflowers are a really pretty addition to any garden that you might have. They're kind of tall, they spread out a little bit, but that bright yellow, people love that. Butterflies love these. The goldfinches love these, especially when the seeds come on them.
So back here is something we have not seen before.
Yeah,
So what's that?
This is a really neat one. This one is called Liatris, or it's one of the different species. We have several. Blazing star is one of the common names for this plant. And this one is a butterfly magnet. They love this plant. So you can see all of these purple flowers. That purple color brings in those bees and those butterflies. And then this is a really good payout for them. They get lots of really good nectar, and of course, they're there to pollinate that plant.
You said they're really colorful. We were just walking past. It was very obvious to us.
Absolutely, yeah. So that pop of purple just makes it very, very obvious, especially to human eyes. Like, we love the pops of purple amongst the yellow. And then across here, if we want to look, we have our black-eyed Susans. So those are another type of aster, another type of daisy type plant, similar to the gray-headed coneflower. And again, these ones are a favorite of butterflies and bees. That flat top on those flowers make them really easy for bees to land on.
And they're very colorful.
Absolutely, and those are great to put in gardens as well, because they really don't get very tall. A lot of the stuff in the prairie, as we've been saying, gets very, very tall.
And this is only
Black-eyed Susans, exactly, not so much. So they're a little bit more manageable in a home garden.
And then,
my favorite plant, is right over here. Here comes the big one.
Okay.
This is Rattlesnake Master, and it is one of those super unique looking, just almost otherworldly plants. That ball flower, the white flowers really don't get as much by way of pollinators. There are some that will still pollinate it. But what makes this plant super, super unique are these really, really thick leaves. So they're very similar to like a yucca plant, which you get down in the Southwest. They're very thick, just like a yucca plant. So these are great at surviving droughts. Unfortunately, we have not been very successful in getting these to germinate in our greenhouse. I wish. I want one in my yard so bad. But again, one of my favorite plants is Rattlesnake Master. Why do you think it got that name?
I'm not sure. I can't say.
So one of the stories is that pioneers would actually use this plant, maybe smash up the leaves, different things like that, and put it on a snake bite. And that poultice would pull out the snake venom. Probably not true.
No.
I wouldn't try it. But that's the story. So that's how it got its name. Rattlesnake Master. Yeah.
So now you want to go check out the milkweed?
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's the milkweed.
Yeah, so milkweed has been like a huge buzz plant lately, right? Because of the monarch butterflies.
Yes.
So this is most likely common milkweed. As you can see, it gets pretty tall.
Yes.
But the common milkweed and any of the other milkweed species are the only species of plant that monarch butterflies will lay their eggs on. So they're caterpillars. They have to eat milkweed. That's all that they'll eat. And then the milkweed, it has some toxins in it that will actually get into the body of the caterpillar and make that caterpillar really, really nasty for any bird that might try and eat it. So because they've been evolving that defense mechanism for so long, birds just know, if I see a yellow, or not a yellow, what am I thinking? An orange and black butterfly, I'm gonna stay away from it. It's gonna make me, wanna spit it out. And it's because of this plant. It's because of the milkweed.
So without this, they would be completely gone.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And that adaptation has gone so far as to, this is the only thing that the caterpillars will eat now. The butterflies, they'll feed on anything because they want the nectar, but the caterpillars have to eat on the leaves of the milkweed. And unfortunately, I don't have any caterpillars to show you today. So we are a monarch way station here at the Nature Institute, but even so, The monarchs, they don't really look at map and say, oh, I'm gonna stop there. There's milkweed there. They haven't come and laid any eggs that I can find. They may have come earlier in the season. But here on the milkweed, you can see the seed pods. So those will dry out, then they'll actually crack open, and then those seeds, they get wind dispersed. So one of the reasons that, our milkweed, we don't have very much of it anymore, is because of those wind dispersed seeds. They end up in cornfields and bean fields and wheat fields and everywhere else that farmers don't want them, and they become kind of a nuisance plant. But they are native and they are needed in our area. So planting them in your yard, and there are other species that don't get this tall and they have prettier flowers. Butterfly milkweed is one of the best ones to plant. It has a bright orange flower on it.
There's also like little bugs on here too.
Yeah, so we have milkweed bugs all over our milkweed. And they're another species that, for the most part, only eat milkweed. And they actually have a long mouth part that they stick into the stem of the plant, and they suck out the juices from the plant.
It's pretty cool.
It is, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for telling us about the prairie here.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming out.
There's a lot of information that I didn't even know.
Yes, there is. Prairies are full of information. So.
Especially about the fire. Did not know that.
Good. Glad you learned something new.
And if you guys enjoyed this week's episode, don't forget to leave a big thumbs up down below, subscribe to my channel, and also check out my Instagram @ColeShirk. And as always, I'll see you next week. If you want to learn more about Prairie Reclamation, come on down to the Nature Institute in Godfrey, Illinois to walk their 5+ miles of trails and bring bug spray. There's a lot of them.